Well, that was me. Me from an early age, close to my current age. And that song really has always resonated with me because I think even in the darkest nights, I still felt like I had hope at that young age. Um, so yeah, that's Carla Dingle, and I'll tell you that all my life I have never felt like I belonged, not in the world, and certainly not in the art form I chose to be a part of. The theater world, the acting world, the comedy world, so many choices um, that I've made. And I started at an early age. At 5 years old, I began taking dance classes. I know, look at me, right? By the age of 7, I was fully immersed in the world of theater, and I spent over 35 years of my life involved in the acting community. And I think I can honestly say, never once did I not have doubts. Never once did I fully feel accepted. And I think part of that has to do with who I am, and part of that has to do with the world that I chose to be in. I've never felt beautiful, and I've never been thin, and I've never felt like I was enough in life and in the theater. As we know, the acting world is judged on aesthetics, the standard of beauty that is impossible to live up to. And at 9, I understood that. I understood that in a way that 9-year-olds shouldn't. But I looked around at the other girls in their costumes and compared myself to them physically, and wow, I think that's when I knew that I would never measure up. I mean, comparison is the devil's language, and it just allows us to pick at flaws and emphasize our insecurities and tear us down bit by bit, pound by pound, costume size by costume size. At age 13, I realized I'd never get the leading role. I'd never be the romantic lead. I'd never have the most lines, that I was always going to be relegated to the fat, funny friend, the sidekick, the overbearing parent, and the roles that demand characters and physicality. Didn't matter if I was the most talented. It just mattered that the other girls were more beautiful and thin. So those were opportunities that I never got. And at 13, it's a tough lesson to swallow. To know that the way you look is more important than the talent that you have. But I loved the theater. I loved an audience. And so I continued on. I took my place, accepted my roles. And at age 17, I found myself drawn to the men in my theater who felt welcoming and safe. You know who I'm talking about. The ones who complimented me and helped boost my self-esteem. As I look back, my crushes, my first boyfriends, they were all queer. It was the 80s, so being out and proud would come later for them. But I loved being loved. I loved being lifted up. And I know that they did love me as the person I truly was. Not for the physical beauty, because that's not what drew them to me. At age 23, I caved to the pressure of university casting. And it just reinforced what I'd known my entire life. I was not enough. For the first time, I began to question if my talent was enough. I'd always relied on my comedic timing, my big characters, but there were 20 women, just like me, at each audition. Big, bold, funny, talented. As I was still trying to figure out who I was and discover who I was supposed to be as a person. Just this revelation of knowing that there were so many like me pushed me to the outskirts of the world I loved. I walked away from performing. I changed my emphasis to script writing and directing and just took performing off the table for me. It felt like the dream, everything I worked for, was just not meant to be. At age 29, I stepped away completely from the theater to focus on my family. As a partner, as a mother, it's funny how all the same insecurities came into play. If you think the theater world is unforgiving, the mom world might be the most unforgiving place. So I carried some baby weight a little longer than a lot of women. I'd always been big, it wasn't a big deal until I was on the playgrounds or invited to pool parties. And everything I felt as that 9-year-old girl came rushing back to me. I'd never be thin enough. I'd never be beautiful enough. I'd never fit in. But this time, it was affecting my son. That judgment of those women, it's not as harsh as the judgment I have of myself. At age 40, after my son was becoming more independent, I felt the pull of the theater again. I needed some sort of an outlet. I missed that world that I was raised in, the energy, the community. And despite all the judgment, I wanted back in. It was the world that had defined me. It had been the strongest piece of the identity. It was where Carla flourished. So I decided to go back. But with life and work, I couldn't commit to musicals or scripted productions. And I didn't know how I could make it work. And I landed on improv. I was on a family vacation, and there it was. Second city, performing on a cruise ship. Something in my soul reached up to my tiny little brain and said, this is what you should do. And I did. And improv has changed my life and truly become my home and my safe haven. I'm revered as the funny fat girl. I was loved for all the things that had made me feel uncomfortable my entire life. I know that I'll never look like all those women. I'll never be like all those other women. But that's okay. Because I'm me. Carla Dingle.